Two Geeks, Two Beers podcast. Nerdy obsessions, drunken ramblings with Morgan, Jeffrey, and Tom Eames.
Hello and welcome to Two Geeks, Two Beers. I'm Morgan, joined by my fellow pod warrior, Tom.
Hello.
Hello. And I'm hungover. Let's just get it out there.
Yeah, I've never seen you so... I turned up at the pub and you were drinking a Coke.
Yeah, I did.
You all right?
Yeah. No, I'm hanging. Absolutely hanging. So let's just put that out there. We'll all acknowledge it.
Yeah.
We'll move on. I did have an alcoholic beverage at the pub. True to form, don't worry. But it's fair to say, Tom, we don't need another beero.
We really don't.
No. Well, this episode, strap in as we race through a potted history of the Mad Max movies. Tom, what do you know about Mad Max?
Yes.
Next to nothing.
Next to nothing.
What's next to nothing? Nothing. More nothing.
I've seen Fury Road.
Oh, have you?
And I really enjoyed that. That was really, really good.
Yeah.
But I felt like it, even though you'll probably tell me whether and how it's connected, it didn't feel like it was connected to the old films. At least I could come into it blind. Yeah. It didn't matter.
I was going to say, how would you know if you hadn't seen the old films?
So I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And I know bits about Mad Max because there's little weird stuff like Gary Newman, who I'm a big fan of, doing a podcast about that.
Yeah.
He modelled one of his albums called Warriors, all about the album wasn't really about it, but the whole look was Mad Max. He dressed up like Mad Max and was all dystopian.
Well, we'll get on to that. It's very, very influential. Has more of an impact on music than you might expect. I mean, obviously we'll talk about the Thunderdome. Yeah. And
I'm sure there's been loads of films that have parodied it and all that kind of stuff.
Been inspired by
like Rocky, I feel like I know bits
Osmosis
without actually having seen it.
Yeah.
But I've always wanted to, just never got around to it. So,
well, coming up, how Mad Max scored a Guinness World Record, the sporting legend who made an unlikely musical contribution, and we'll attempt to unpick the franchise's thorny timeline.
Interesting.
So Mad Max is a post-apocalyptic dystopian action film series spanning 4 movies so far, created by George Miller and Byron Kennedy, with Miller having directed or co-directed all 4 films. In the films, society has collapsed, and the series follows Max Rokitansky, a police officer turned vigilante in a near-future Australia ravaged by war. On his travels, Loner Max encounters and helps pockets of civilization out of a mixture of self-interest and altruism. I'm pretty sure that's the first time we've used that word on this podcast.
And lost.
Mel Gibson famously portrayed Max in the first 3 films, while Tom Hardy portrayed the character in the latest film, Mad Max Fury Road. And the series also features a few recurring cast members in different roles. So Hugh Keys-Byrne played the antagonist in 2 movies, Toe Cutter in Mad Max and Immortan Joe in Mad Max Fury Road.
Didn't realise that.
Yeah, well, his face was covered in Fury Road, so you couldn't really tell it was the same guy. Right. Plus, there was obviously a huge gap in time. And Bruce Spence played the gyro captain in Mad Max 2 and Jebediah the pilot in Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, the third movie. The series has been well received by critics. Mad Max 2 and Fury Road in particular have been ranked among the best action films ever made.
So not one of those franchises where they never really beat the first one.
No, if anything, 2 takes everything that was good about the first, builds on it. 3 is a little bit of a dip, but actually I would say not as bad as some would have you believe.
Yeah.
Still very watchable. And then 4 is Fury Road is great.
Yeah.
So the first film, Mad Max, released 12th of April, 1979.
So I've got to say, I didn't realise it was that long ago.
Yeah.
Because I didn't realise Mel Gibson's been around that long. But
well, this was what made him Mel Gibson. This was his breakthrough.
Because the thing,
Pre-Lethal Weapon.
I love What Women Want. Great film.
Yeah.
If you ask me.
Never going to get an opportunity to talk about that again.
And so that came out in 2000.
Yeah.
And Mel Gibson in the film is still treated like he's a sex symbol.
But he's going to seed a little bit.
He's losing his hair a bit. Yeah. He's not really looking great, but he's still treated as such. And I was like, it's 1979. It's quite a big gap between.
Yeah.
But I remember watching it going, I bet Mel must be like 50, 55 at this point. It's only like 43.
Oh, wow.
What Women Want came out.
So.
And it's like, he's
gone to see.
That was the last moment that Mel was in any way thought of as a sex
symbol. And that's why he was replaced, as we'll get onto for the fourth film. He's just too old.
Yeah, but he's a very attractive man back in the day.
At his peak?
Yeah.
No question.
Yeah.
Well, James McCausland and George Miller wrote the script for Mad Max from a story by Miller and producer Byron Kennedy. The film was shot in just 6 weeks. Miller, who prior to making his feature directorial debut on Mad Max was previously a medical doctor in Sydney, did 3 months of emergency medical calls to help raise the money to make the film. So in a near-future dystopian Australia plagued by oil shortages and environmental collapse, the Main Force Patrol, or MFP, is one of the last bastions of law enforcement struggling against chaos. Their top officer, Max Rokitansky, ends the rampage of a violent biker gang member, Knight Rider, not related, through a lethal pursuit that culminates in Knight Rider's death. In response, Knight Rider's gang, led by the deranged toe cutter, murder Max's wife and son, and the now vigilante Max embarks on a mission of vengeance.
Didn't realise it was a vengeance film. Okay.
Here's the trailer. Okay. Yeah, it's one of those, vengeance film. That's what they call it.
You know what I meant.
In the not-too-distant future, there will be no civilization. There will be no heroes.
Oh.
They say people don't believe in heroes anymore. Well, damn them. You and me, Max. We're gonna give them back their heroes.
Now, you might be thinking that actor was quite badly dubbed. We will get on to
Okay.
Mad and the Main Force Patrol.
Old trailers sort of feel the same these days. You don't get anything like this anymore. The Main Force Patrol.
Exactly, explaining the plot.
There he is, Tokar.
It's got that kind of Evil Dead, unofficial quality to it because the budget was so small.
Yeah, like it was literally filmed by a bunch of mates, which it kind of was.
But makes it more
scarier.
Scary,
yeah. The first film is quite scary. It's less of an action movie.
And stay alive.
Love the music.
Yeah. And they're not like, Mel Gibson's in this movie, because he wasn't Mel Gibson at this point, just some guy, which we'll get onto.
His only weapon, 600 horses of fuel-injected vengeance. Mad Max, the maximum force of the future.
Amazing. And I guess like the whole genre of post-apocalyptic films, did it start here?
I don't know if it started,
but in terms of it being mainstream and
it definitely has like influenced a lot of those sorts of films that came after. They all have that kind of Mad Max feel. So for the lead role of Max, Miller considered casting an American actor to, in his words, get the film seen as widely as possible, and even travel to LA, but eventually opted not to do so because the whole budget would be taken up by a so-called American name. His first choice for the role of Max was the Irish-born James Healy, who at the time worked at an abattoir and was seeking a new acting job, but he turned down the part after reading the script, even though he was working in an abattoir.
It was that.
Casting director Mitch Matthews invited a class of recent National Institute of Dramatic Art graduates to audition for Max, specifically asking for spunky young guys. Among these actors was the American-born Mel Gibson, whose audition impressed Miller and Matthews and earned him the role of Max. And here's Mel talking about that.
I actually dropped a friend off because he'd been called in for an audition. So I drove him, dropped him, and then I waited for him in the waiting room with the girls at the casting agency. But I'd had a very bad weekend. I got into a brawl, and I didn't come out looking too pretty. I sort of took on half a rugby team. And it was just,
doesn't sound like Mel Gibson.
It didn't work out too well on my end. So I was looking pretty bad. They took Polaroids because I was like really every color of the rainbow, and they put them up. And they said, "Man, we need freaks in this film. This is when you heal up, come back and see us." I was a young actor and nobody had a job, and I thought, what the hell? So that was an attraction enough. It could have been a commercial for toilet cleaner. I would have gone for it, to earn a buck. So I went back, and they said, "And you are?" About 2 weeks later, and I said, "That's me up there on the wall." Because they had these pictures of me, and they went, "Oh my God!" And they sent me in, and I talked to George Miller, and he just kind of gave me the part right there. It was real weird. He said, "Can you memorize this?" And it was like 2 pages of dialogue with a big speech and stuff. And I was like, yeah, sure. So I went into the other room and I just kind of got a gist of what it was. And I came out and just kind of ad-libbed what I could remember. And I guess they bought it.
Can't get it cleared up my head, Jess. You're so full of living, you know? You ran a franchise on it.
Most of the biker gang extras featured in the film were members of actual motorcycle clubs and rode their own motorcycles in the film. Yeah. Even being forced to ride from their residence in Sydney to the shooting locations in Melbourne because of the film's tight budget did not allow for transport.
Find your own way there.
Yeah, it'll be fine. Yeah. Allegedly, most of the extras were also paid in beer. A bit like us. It was not originally the intention when the script was written to set it in a post-apocalyptic world. This was done because they didn't have the money for extras and properly maintain buildings. In order to cover for this production value limitation, a title card was added to the beginning of the film explaining the story was set after a world war. So basically they were shooting in like rundown buildings and there was only like a few people around. So they were like, I'll just say it's like post-apocalypse and the human race is like mostly decimated. And
didn't come up in the plot of the film then?
Not really.
They don't talk about that sort of thing.
If not for that, it could just be the first film. Yeah, could just be like set now. Wow. There's nothing like super futuristic about it or anything because it's meant to be like the day after tomorrow, that kind of idea. Yeah. Like it's
no one's going to buy that this was just downtown LA or whatever.
No,
it's like,
I
just say it was set in the future.
Yeah. Miller described making Mad Max as guerrilla filmmaking. The crew closed roads without filming permits and couldn't use walkie-talkies because their frequency was the same as police radio. Miller almost quit the project due to the difficult shoot. He and Byron Kennedy edited the film in a friend's apartment, cutting picture in the kitchen and sound in the lounge. The film featured music by Brian May.
Wow. I don't know if I knew that.
But it's not that Brian May. That's why. That's why. If
I would have believed it.
If that's what you thought, you'd be wrong.
Oh, okay.
No, I was briefly like, wait, what? No, it's an Australian film composer, not to be confused with the Queen guitarist of the same name. He's like, if you go on his Wikipedia page, it's like not the guy from Queen,
right?
Which has got to be like, this guy's like composed the music for Mad Max, like pretty big deal in terms of like film composing. But will always be the second most famous Brian May. Yeah. That's got to be like, call yourself something different.
Yeah, I know. Come up with a different name.
Come up with a nickname.
Brian James May.
That always annoys me when like there's someone called like, I don't know, like, I was going to say David Beckham, but no one else is called David Beckham.
There were two Michael Jacksons.
Right.
There was like a beer writer called Michael Jackson.
Right.
And there's a snooker player called Robbie Williams. What are you doing?
Exactly.
Yeah.
If your name is, well, I mean, there's other reasons you might want to change your name if your name is Michael Jackson. But if your name is like Robert Williams.
Stay that.
Or even if your Christian name is Robbie Williams on your birth certificate, like just say go by Rob.
Yeah.
Go by Rob. You're not gonna you're not gonna unless you're like trying to make it a thing.
Yeah.
Like
I know.
Annoying.
Yeah.
Yeah. I say this to my wife Kat and she's like, no, they can call themselves whatever they like. And I'm like, yeah, but no. They're dead. No, sorry.
It was like when you said before when Harry Styles came out with Sign of the Times. Like,
nah. Same rule. Same rule. You can't have
famous a name.
No, you can't have a song called Sign of the Times.
Fine if you've got a song called Crazy, like a general name, but when it's a very specific, like if you release a song called Bohemian Rhapsody.
Yeah, exactly.
Just being a dick.
Exactly. There's I know it's unfortunate, but there's already a more famous one, so you can't. You sacrifice.
You know, like in football, American football, they retire numbers.
Yeah.
Those
that name,
iconic.
That name is out of circulation. No one else can be called that. Can't be called that name. Yeah. Sorry. No. Mad Max was banned in New Zealand and Sweden due to its violence, and it remained banned in Sweden until 2005.
Wow, Sweden just didn't have.
Sweden did not have time for it.
They weren't very tough cookies. They just didn't. Yeah.
Uptight. When Mad Max was released in the United States in 1980, the original Australian dialogue was redubbed.
Oh, come on.
Badly.
How stupid are
by American voice actors. They were just like, whoa, this is...
I just can't figure out what they're saying.
No. The original Australian dialogue track was finally released in North America in 2000. So they just had to watch the dubbed version until 2000. That was released with the Australian audio edit in a limited theatrical re-release, and the film has since been released in the US on DVD with both of the soundtracks included, so you can kind of flick between the two.
I don't know why you loved the dubbed version.
I don't know why you would choose to watch.
So it wasn't even Mel's voice.
No,
well, because they didn't even get Mel in to do an American accent.
No, because at the time it's like, well, he's not Mel Gibson, he's just some dude. So yeah, we'll dub him. Why not? God. Yeah, but you think they would have sorted out before 2000?
I know.
Like, come on. Given its small production budget of around $350,000 to $400,000 Australian dollars, Mad Max was the most profitable film ever made at the time. mostly because it was so cheap, and held the Guinness World Record for the highest box office to budget ratio of any motion picture until the release of the Blair Witch Project in 1999, which again is like, if you want to scoop up that Guinness World Record, just make a really, really cheap film.
Yeah, I think, is it Paranormal Activity? I think has got the record now.
Really?
Very similar.
Yeah. However, despite being very, very profitable, Mad Max received mixed reviews. Praised by Variety. It was praised by Variety, but the New York Times called it ugly and incoherent.
Well, yeah.
And that's kind of the point.
Yeah.
And the Australian social commentator and film producer Philip Adams said it would be a special favourite of rapists, sadists, child murderers, and that it had all the emotional uplift of Mein Kampf.
Wow.
Philip was not a fan.
He did not like it, did he? He was in a bad mood that day.
He went in.
Wow.
He was like, it's bad, Max.
Yeah.
It has gone on, though, to have a cult following.
Good. I haven't had one of them for a while.
No, I know.
Yeah.
I haven't done a mixed reviews. I haven't done a cult following in a little while.
Yeah.
The film now holds a 91% approval rating on Rotten Tomatoes. James Wan and Leigh Whannell credit the film's final scene, in which Max handcuffs gang member Johnny's ankle to an overturned car and gives him a hacksaw to cut off either the handcuffs or his own foot to escape imminent death, for inspiring the entire Saw series. So even types of films you wouldn't expect to be influenced by and inspired by Mad Max, in fact, were. Mad Max is also credited with inspiring the films of James Cameron, the Fallout series of video games, and the music video for the 2001 single Addicted to Bass by Pure Tone.
I mean, I know which one I'm more impressed by.
Yeah. The one that really shows its pop culture impact.
Cracking tune.
Yeah. So that brings us on to Mad Max 2.
Yes.
Which was released on the 24th of December, 1981
Christmas
in Australia. Mad Max 2 is a Christmas movie.
Okay.
Yeah, counts.
Weird, isn't it? Like,
yeah.
I guess if it was really popular, then you think,
Do you think anyone went to see Mad Max 2 on Christmas Day, 1981? Someone must have done.
Yeah.
I'd love to, if you went to see Mad Max 2 in the cinema on Christmas Day, 1981, get in touch. Podcast at twogeeks2beers.com.
Yeah.
So George Miller was driven to make a sequel to Mad Max by the appeal of a bigger budget and more creative control, saying, I felt we could do a better job with a second movie. So in this film, haunted by the loss of his family, Max roams the desert wasteland and arrives at a besieged oil refinery, becoming entangled in the refinery settlers' struggles against a gang of marauders led by the formidable Lord Humongous. Cast as Wes in the film, a mohawked, leather-clad biker who serves as Humongous's lieutenant, was Vernon Wells, who 4 years later would play the villain Bennett in 1985's Commando.
Wow.
In 2011, Empire magazine listed Wes as the greatest movie henchman of all time.
That is strong words. Okay.
Now, it's time for a fact smash.
Ooh, wow.
And we're very excited because we did make a plea for anyone to send in a fact smash jingle to stop us making tits of ourselves.
Yes.
And unbelievably, more than one person has done it.
Well, we've got currently 4. So what we're going to do is we're going to play a different one each time. So we're going to keep inviting you. Please do send us your fact smash.
We'd love to hear some more
new ones
fact smash jingles,
So here's the first one this week. And it goes to, it's Stuart Mackay, who sent us a few actually, so we'll keep playing those. This is, I think it was done by his son Jack. So let's give this a whirl, shall we?
Fantastic, so exciting.
Fact smash. Smash. We're gonna smash. We're gonna smash those facts. We're gonna smash.
Brilliant.
Love it. Thanks very much, Stu and Jack.
Keep sending them in.
Yeah. So, Mad Max 2 fact smash. Mel Gibson only has 16 lines of dialogue in the entire film. Yeah.
Not words, lines.
lines. But quite short lines. The original cut of the film was more bloody and violent, but was trimmed to receive an M rating from Australian censors. Entire scenes and sequences were deleted completely, and the original cut no longer exists.
Wow.
So no Mad Max 2 director's cut. Warner Brothers decided to release Mad Max 2 in the United States, but recognizing the first film was not well known in North America, they decided to change the name of the sequel to The Road Warrior.
Yeah, I have heard that.
Yeah.
Well, they probably didn't say it because you bloody cut it up and put weird dubbing on it, so no one knew what was going on.
Yeah, that's why it wasn't. I mean, it did well, but the advertising for the film, including the print ads, the trailers, and the TV commercials, did not refer to the Max character at all and shied away from the fact that the film was a sequel, as you will see now.
Okay.
future, cities will become deserts.
Cities.
Roads will become battlefields. And the hope of mankind will appear as a stranger. He works alone against all odds. He may be the best chance we've got.
It's that little kid, the feral kid. Just remember him.
Okay.
We'll come back to him.
You want to get out of here? You talk to me.
I think Bennett's got his arse out.
He does.
Warrior.
Of course.
Warrior.
Warrior. The Road Warrior.
Never say warrior. Music by Brian May.
Yeah. Okay, he's back. Not that one.
Not that one. Imagine if they got the real Brian May this time.
The poor Australian Brian May. Not even the real Brian May. The film received positive reviews, Mad Max 2, and holds an approval rating of 93% on Rotten Tomatoes. Ebert, who was writing for the Chicago Sun-Times, he praised Mad Max 2's skillful filmmaking and called it a film of pure action, of kinetic energy, which is one of the most relentlessly aggressive movies ever made. That's what you want. Mad Max 2 is now widely hailed as both one of the greatest action movies of all time and one of the greatest sequels ever made, with Empire, the New York Times, and Entertainment Weekly all considering it one of the best movies ever made. Filmmakers Guillermo del Toro, David Fincher, Robert Rodriguez, and Zack Snyder, and video game director Hideo Kojima have all cited Mad Max 2 as one of their favorite movies. A museum dedicated to Mad Max 2 featuring props and memorabilia was established in 2010 near to the film's shooting location, and a line in the film, "Two mighty warrior tribes went to war," inspired the song Two Tribes by Frankie Goes to Hollywood.
Yeah.
The animated series reboot, Tom, also features an episode titled Bad Bob, which is heavily influenced by the film.
This might be another thing where I've sort of, remembered bits. Yes. They used to go really long and hard on parodies and things.
Yeah.
The point was most kids like me won't have a clue what.
No. If you're watching Reboot, you probably shouldn't have seen Mad Max 2.
No.
If you're the target audience.
Yeah.
But who is this for? It's just the people behind it having fun.
Yeah, just having a laugh.
Yeah.
Oh, it was so good, Reboot. Of course, he's got a dog. Yeah.
Principal Office Airlines at your service. Please take your seats and fasten your safety belts. I want you to get back there and tell those two to uncouple the trailer when I sound the horn. You got it?
I was just enjoying Reboot there. just sitting there watching it.
Get carried away.
Yeah.
That's a different episode. We already did that episode. Yeah. So that leads us on to the third film, Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, released on the 10th of July, 1985.
Okay. Thunderdome.
The world had been through a trial by fire, and only the greatest warriors and the deadliest enemies emerged from the flames.
Who are you?
Nobody.
Mister, I can feel it. The dice are rolling.
He was the one they called mad.
But he's just a raggedy man.
But to those whose lives hung in the balance...
Where's the waiting ones? Waiting for what? Waiting for you.
He was the one they called hero.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, dying times here.
Now, Mad Max is back in Beyond Thunderdome. Mel Gibson, Tina Turner.
Of course. Together at last.
Mad Max, Beyond Thunderdome.
I like it when particularly a title of a sequel doesn't have a colon. When it's just, it's Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome.
Yeah.
Makes sense. It's not, no need. No need for a colon. Max ends up in Bartertown in this film, a trading post ruled by Anti-Entity, played by Tina Turner.
Hard word to say.
Yeah, after a few beers. Miller is said to have considered Jane Fonda and the Bionic Woman's Lindsay Wagner for the role of Anti-Entity. But while in London, had seen Tina Turner on TV discussing her desire to act. He saw Tina Turner on TV wanting to play Anti-Entity. Miller said, we needed someone whose vitality and intelligence would make her control over Bartertown credible. She had to be a positive character rather than a conventional evil bad guy. We worked on the script with her in mind, but we had no idea if she'd be interested. So Anti offers Max supplies in return for his help in dealing with the Master and the Blaster, or the Master and the Blaster, collectively known as Master Blaster, the duo controlling the town's energy source. Max's mission is to challenge and defeat Blaster in the Thunderdome, a gladiatorial, a gladiatorial arena where conflicts are resolved. However, after discovering Blaster's intellectual disability during the fight, Max refuses to kill him, leading to his punishment and exile into the wasteland. Max is rescued by Savannah Nix, a member of a primitive tribe of children, believing him to be their prophesized savior. The children set out for Bartertown, and Max decides to help them rescue Master from Underworld.
So is this their kind of, do you think this is them trying to appeal more to kids by having more sort of kids in it?
Well, this is why, we'll get onto it, but this is why people don't like this one as much. Right. It feels a bit more...
Return of the Jedi route.
It feels a bit more... these kids are very much like the Ewoks of Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome. Their daring escape destroys Bartertown's refinery, but they are pursued by Anti's forces. In a desperate bid for freedom, Max sacrifices his chance of escape, allowing the children and Master to flee. Impressed, Anti decides to spare Max. Yeah. So she just goes, it's fine, you can live. Nice. Beyond Thunderdome was the first Mad Max film made without producer Byron Kennedy, who had been killed in a helicopter crash in 1983. George Miller was hesitant to continue without his producing partner, saying later, I was reluctant to go ahead, and then there was a sort of need to, let's do something just to get over the shock and grief of all of that. And there is a title card at the end of the film before the end credits roll that reads, for Byron. Still grieving, Miller asked his friend George Ogilvy to co-direct the movie with him. So it's the only one he didn't direct solo. The film, famously, we've talked about it on the podcast before, contains two songs actually performed by Tina Turner. One of The Living, which plays over the opening titles, and We Don't Need Another Hero, open brackets, Thunderdome, close brackets.
Amazing.
Which plays over the end credits. The Thunderdome. We don't know that... I can't even say it. We Don't Need Another Hero, open brackets, Thunderdome, close brackets, reached number 1 in Canada, number 2 in the US, and number 3 on the British singles charts. Feels like it should have been a number 1.
I know.
So...
Still hear it all the time.
Yeah. It received a Golden Globe Award nomination for Best Original Song and a Grammy Award nomination for Best Female Pop Vocal Performance. Turner was backed by a choral group from King's House School in Richmond, London. One of their choir members who appeared on the recording was Lawrence Dallaglio, who became famous as a rugby union star and captain of the England national team. Yeah, I guess he just had a sweet, sweet, angelic little voice. Yeah.
Great.
We don't need another way.
It's kind of
we don't need another hero.
Quite a rugby song, that you can imagine. Being chanted.
Yeah. England playing in the Six Nations, bit of Tina. Yeah. Why not? Although the film's budget was larger than that of its predecessors, its box office yield was only moderate in comparison. It also received mixed reviews again, with some critics disliking the inclusion of the tribe of children.
It was a red flag for me. I was watching the trailer. I was like,
who were compared to the Lost Boys from Peter Pan, while some fans criticised the film for being Hollywoodized and having a lighter tone than its
inevitable.
predecessors.
It's what happens.
Yeah. Very few, although we'll come back to this later, actually, very few great third films in a franchise. Lots of good sequels.
Yeah.
But it's hard to get the third one right. But when I watched the Mad Max films for the first time, I'd heard a lot of shit about Thunderdome, and I was like, oh, here we go, the duffer. And I was like, it's all right.
Yeah.
It's fine.
It's like Ghostbusters 2. Like, everyone slagged it off. I watched it recently. I was like, no, it's good.
That's good. Like, not as good as Ghostbusters, and same with this. It's like, well, it is the worst one, but it's like, it's fine. And so the film holds an 81% approval rating on Rotten Tomatoes, so it's not as good as the other three, but it's still pretty good, watchable.
It had higher standards back then, so when it was remotely a duffer, everyone slagged it off entirely.
Yeah.
It was fine.
And like a high bar after Mad Max 2, which one of the greatest action films ever made. So that brings us on to Mad Max Fury Road. So a bit of a laboured journey getting to this one. So in 1987, 2 years after the release of Beyond Thunderdome, George Miller had the idea of making a Mad Max installment that was almost a continuous chase. However, the film spent many years in development hell before pre-production began in 1998. The film finally entered pre-production at 20th Century Fox in the early 2000s, with Mel Gibson set to reprise his role of Max.
Wow.
And they already had an idea that there would be like a female co-lead in this movie, and Sigourney Weaver was being eyed up, which you can sort of see with the shaved head and everything. However, production was indefinitely postponed after the September 11th attacks in 2001 because, according to George Miller, they caused the American dollar to collapse against the Australian dollar, meaning the film's budget ballooned. It would have been like prohibitively expensive to make it.
Right.
And there were also security concerns and tightened travel and shipping restrictions during the lead up to the Iraq War, which caused issues with the proposed shoot in Namibia.
Right.
In 2006, Miller said he was thinking about making Fury Road without Mel Gibson due to the actor now being too old to play Max. This is 6 years after What Women Want, so he's really gone to seed by this point now.
And other things were going on.
Well, and I think that's happened at this point. I think that may have also fed in. Miller briefly considered making the film as an anime-inspired animated movie, but the project eventually reverted to being live action. Miller decided to pursue the film again in 2007 after the release of his animated comedy film Happy Feet. Because outside of Mad Max, George Miller has directed Happy Feet and its sequel, and both Babe and its follow-up, Babe Pig in the City.
Cracking films. I mean, Babe is brilliant,
but like eclectic, but also like he can.
He was so like shaken up by the Mad Max films. Like I need a cleanse.
Yeah. But I love that he can like make really good nihilistic action films, but also like brilliant family films.
You can imagine actually a Mad Max film coming out in 2007. It was that kind of era of the other Miller. Frank Miller doing City and all that sort of stuff. You can imagine it kind of fitting in with that kind of vibe.
Would have been interesting to see that version of Fury Road if it would have been called that. So Mel's out of the picture, and Tom Hardy was cast as Max. Sorry, I just remember the upstairs downstairs incident. That's why.
Shall I insert it here?
That's why I laughed
as a flashback.
Now we need a jingle for a Two Geeks flashback.
Flashback. Backs to be flashed.
I was like, you're just doing Funhouse. Backs to be flashed.
Sounds dodgy. Okay, here, if you haven't heard it, here's Morgan's story about Tom Hardy.
Yeah.
Did I ever tell you about when I interviewed Tom Hardy?
No.
And so...
Didn't know you did.
I interviewed Tom Hardy and his father, Chips.
Oh, yes.
For the TV series Taboo.
Yeah.
And during this interview... Chips was talking about how, in his opinion, Taboo was influenced by great BBC dramas of the past. So he was listing off all these shows, I don't know, whatever, Wuthering Heights, all these shows. Hardy had sat down, Tom Hardy, had said nothing, just sort of like hunched over the table, was staring me dead in the eye, not saying a word, while his father listed off, these inspirations. And so Chips was like... Yes, Wuthering Heights, Wolf Hall. Tom Hardy goes, upstairs, downstairs. First thing he said. Didn't even say hello. Just sat down and then upstairs, downstairs. Terrifying man.
I like that idea. That has nothing to do with what you're talking about. It was just a phrase that he says every now and then because he's so mental. Upstairs, downstairs.
Upstairs, downstairs, upstairs, downstairs.
Tom, just think of the happy place.
Anyway, sidebar.
You can tell that was from an old episode because the sound quality was a lot
Noticeably worse.
Noticeably worse.
But yeah, I feel like Tom Hardy does look a bit like a young Mel Gibson.
He's got that kind of rugged vibe. Yeah. Also considered for the role were Armie Hammer, Jeremy Renner, Michael Fassbender,
nice,
Joel Kinnaman, Heath Ledger,
obviously,
Eric Bana, who I think would have been good, and Eminem, who turned it down because he didn't want to leave the US. He was like, "No, I'm not." He's like, "I'm not." I don't know. I don't know what Eminem sounds like, but he's like, "I'm not coming to Australia."
Does he never leave America?
Like, apparently not. He's like, "I'm not coming to Australia." Hates it. He must tour the world, you would think. Yeah. But I guess not for this.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. I do think it's weird that Eminem has never everyone's like, because everyone's like,
oh, 8 Mile,
here he comes, 8 Mile. And then he was like, oh, actually, he's really good.
Yeah.
And they just never did anything again.
Yeah, just one and done.
Yeah. Maybe that he just kept getting offered stuff and he was like, where's it filming?
Yeah.
Not in my house.
Yeah.
I'll leave it. Thanks. You know, it's like a really big like action bit. It's going to be like really good. No.
I've got things to do.
Yeah, I'm busy. Yeah, you can lose yourself out that way. That's what you can do.
I need to make music gold, like Just Lose It.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he's like the George Miller of rap musicians. Eminem, where he'll make like really amazing dark stuff, and then he does a song that's like kiss my bum, and it's like what are you doing? Like,
I feel like it just depends what day, what side of the bed he wakes up on.
Yeah, he's also kind of the Mel Gibson of rap musicians as well. But we won't get into that.
Mel Gibson of rap. I'm sure he'd love to hear that, wouldn't he?
Fuck him. Uma Thurman was considered for the role of the female lead, now called Furiosa, but eventually went, of course, to Charlize Theron. Principal photography was delayed several more times before it actually began in July 2012. The film wrapped in December 2012 with reshoots almost a year later in November 2013. And the film finally came out in May 2015, which is why...
Nearly 2 years later.
Yeah. Well, but there's a lot going on in that film.
There's a lot of editing.
A lot of editing.
It takes long for me to edit.
A lot of visual effects. Apparently, he filmed 470 hours of footage for Fury Road, which took 3 months just to watch. They had to watch the whole thing and then edit it. So it's no wonder it took a little while. According to Miller, 90% of the effects in the film were achieved practically.
Good.
Including a guitar that shoots fire.
I mean, so cool.
Yeah, and real, practical.
But this film is obviously loved by most people who have seen it.
Yeah.
If not all people.
Most, if not all. Yeah.
But I think if you asked anyone, they just prefer seeing real things than shitty CGI.
No one, for the most part, I think, thinks if you can achieve something practically, it's better to do it in CGI. It's just cheaper. That's the only reason. It's the only reason.
But it's still not cheap, though.
No. But it is if you make it bad,
which
is what they do now. And they rush the. It's not the fault of the VFX artists to get like no budget and no time, and then you have and people just go they'll watch it. They'll come and see the new Marvel movie.
Yeah.
What, even if the effects are bad? Yeah, they don't care, and they're right.
Yeah.
People will go and see it and just complain about the effects, but it won't stop them watching the film.
Even though it looks like Spy Kids from 2003.
Hey, Spy Kids was.
I know.
Pretty good.
Here we are,
time.
20 years on, and it looks not as good as Spy Kids.
The one that is, for me, it's always like, why is it worse than Jurassic Park?
Yeah.
Which is now like 30 years old.
Because a lot of it was real.
Yeah.
And then
but the CGI is great.
Yeah.
Welcome to Two Old Farts complaining about the state of the world.
Yeah.
Of the 150 vehicles constructed, only 88 survived to the end of filming. So they totaled a lot of vehicles, with the others built to facilitate their intended method of destruction. So in this film, Max Rokitansky is back. He's captured by Immortan Joe's forces in a post-apocalyptic wasteland and used as a blood donor for a war boy named Nux, played by Nicholas Hoult, who, Tom, when we were in the pub, weirdly, we were talking about Nicholas Hoult, and you referred to him as the kid from About a Boy. all the things he's done, you're like, who's that kid from About a Boy?
We're talking about Aaron Taylor Johnson, who might be Bond.
Yeah,
And
allegedly at time of recording.
And I was like, the kid from Kick-Ass can't be James Bond.
Yeah.
And then, because at one point, Nicholas Hoult was also thought of for James Bond, just because he's a British actor.
Yeah.
Like, he can't be the kid from About a Boy doing
the kid from About a Boy,
Buster Rhymes, whatever it is. Is it that song he does in the film?
Buster Rhymes.
He raps. He's rapping along. I don't know.
In About a Boy.
Yeah, in About a Boy.
I've not seen About.
But anyway, he can't. No, he can't be James. Look, and he's great. He's a great actor now.
Yeah.
He's great in this.
Yeah. He's really good in this actually.
James Bond.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Imperator Furiosa, one of Joe's commanders, embarks on a supposed trade mission in an armoured war rig, secretly smuggling Joe's 5 wives to freedom. Rosie Huntington-Whiteley, Zoe Kravitz, and Riley Keough are among the actors playing Joe's wives.
Forgot about that.
Yeah. Discovering their escape, Joe leads his army in a relentless pursuit, with Max inadvertently dragged into the chase when Nux attaches him to his vehicle. In the ensuing chaos, Furiosa and Max, initially at odds, form an uneasy alliance. After evading capture through a deadly sandstorm and confrontations with various desert gangs, they learn that their hoped-for sanctuary, the Green Place, has been destroyed. So the group plans a daring return to the Citadel to overthrow the tyrant Joe.
So I'm assuming you're going to talk about timelines and shit.
We'll get onto that. Okay. We will get onto that.
Confused. Okay.
Yeah.
In this wasteland, I am the one who runs from both the living and the dead. A man reduced to a single instinct. Survive.
Is he putting on an Australian accent?
There's hints of it, but then Gibson didn't sound like pure Aussie either.
You arise from the ashes of this world.
We are not things. We are not things.
Where is she taking them?
Great villain.
Yeah. And the same guy played the main villain in Mad Max. Terrifying both times.
I want them back! They're my property!
Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!
Nicholas Hoult is great at playing little weirdos.
Yes,
that's what he's
exactly.
good at. Yeah.
Let's go.
The fact that most of that is real.
Yeah.
As the world fell, each of us in our own way was broken. It was hard to know who was more crazy. Me or everyone else.
So good. It's wild to me that, and we will get onto the reasons why, and there is something coming now, but that came out and they didn't just go, make 12 more of those, please. But why did that not kickstart?
I know, I don't get it.
The Mad Max. Well, we will get into why, and there is a why, but it's still wild. So although Miller was contractually obliged to deliver a PG-13 cut of Fury Road, Warner Brothers decided, and it's good, credit to the studio, decided to hold test screenings for 2 different versions, the studio cut, which was PG-13, and Miller's preferred cut. Yeah. The Miller cut tested better than the studio cut, so they said, fine, we'll release the film with an R rating. Yeah. Good.
Make more money.
Well, yeah, give the people what they want. Yeah. It grossed $380 million at the worldwide box office, making it the highest grossing Mad Max film. The film was praised by critics for its direction, writing, action sequences, musical score, technical aspects, performances, and feminist themes, with a 97% score on Rotten Tomatoes, so the highest ranking film as well. And people love it. Not a bad word to say about Fury Road.
Good. Boring, if anything.
Yeah.
It's boring talking about good things on this podcast.
It was also nominated for 10 awards at the 88th Academy Awards, winning 6, but again, mostly like technical categories. It wasn't up for Best Picture. Now, you talked about timelines.
Yes.
So there is a fan theory that Mad Max in this film is not the same character as Mel Gibson's Max. Mad Max 2, as I mentioned earlier, features a young, mostly mute character known as the Feral Kid. Some have speculated that Tom Hardy's character is the Feral Kid grown up, and he sort of modeled himself on Max and goes by Max because that was his hero as a kid. In Mad Max 2, so there are some clues pointing to this. In Mad Max 2, Gibson's Max gives the Feral Kid a wind-up music box, which is similar to one we see Hardy's Max have in his possession in Fury Road. That's probably the biggest clue. That's like, how's he got the music box?
Interesting.
Yeah. However, maybe it's just more than one music box, because when this theory was put to George Miller, he said, no. Now. Is Tom Hardy's Max the Feral Kid? Now. He said no, unfortunately, but that's a great idea. I think it's a reasonable interpretation, but not in my mind. So he's like, if you want to think that, fine, but I'm the guy, and I say no.
He is the same Max.
But it gets more complicated. Okay. So, and in addition to that, a comic miniseries co-written by Miller establishes that Hardy's Max is the same character as Mel Gibson's Max, kind of joins up the two.
Okay.
So Miller is saying it, he's the same. However, it gets more complicated because the original Mad Max, which was released in 1979, opens with the caption, "A few years from now," plus there's a piece of graffiti on a road sign dated December 1984, which would seem to suggest that Mad Max, the original, is set in the mid-1980s. I guess now you would say it's like an alternative 1980s. Mad Max 2 takes place 3 years after Mad Max. Mad Max 3, another 15 years later, which means that film would have to be set in the early 2000s. But these new prequel comics, which establish that Gibson's Max and Hardy's Max are the same, also shows that the war which brought down society didn't happen until after 2015. Fury Road is set 30 years after the downfall, which means that Fury Road would have to be set in 2050, which means it can't be on the same timeline as the original Mad Max movies because he would be like dead.
I'm going with the fan theory on this one.
So it could be that. Or if Max is the same character as Miller says, maybe Fury Road is sort of a sequel, but sort of a reboot. And if you think those events happened to him, but on a sort of different timeline. Right. So it's like an alternative Max.
I just say parallel universe.
Or yeah, exactly. It's a parallel universe.
Multiverse crap.
Yeah. There you go. Multiverse solves all problems. And George Miller has called the film a revisiting rather than a reboot. A prequel, Furiosa, a Mad Max saga. They have gone for a colon there. Is set for release on the 24th of May, 2024, at time of recording, with Miller returning as writer and director and Anya Taylor-Joy cast as a young Furiosa. Chris Hemsworth also appears in the film with a younger Immortan Joe, also set to feature as a character. As for whether Max will appear, George Miller has said, I won't give away too much about that. All I'll say is Max is lurking there in the background. So it'd be cool if he had a little cameo.
As you say, too much time has passed since the last one.
Yeah, almost 10 years.
And I don't think anyone's crying out for a young Furiosa film.
Well, I think a Furiosa film.
Exactly. Which it was meant to be for a while.
I think it's
I swear that Charlize Theron had signed up, and I think people would be up for that.
Yeah. Well, I'd rather see that or another Mad Max.
That's what I mean.
Another Mad Max film. And there has been talk of another Mad Max movie titled Mad Max The Wasteland, which would be more of a sort of bona fide sequel to Fury Road. In 2015, Tom Hardy said that he was attached to star in 3 more Mad Max films following Fury Road, but hasn't materialized. Yeah. There have also been Mad Max novelizations of the first 3 movies. There was a video game for the NES based on Mad Max 2, and a 2015 game released to PC, PS4, and Xbox One, in which Max was voiced by Bren Foster. Another Mad Max game was developed for the SNES and the Sega Genesis or Mega Drive, but when publisher Mindscape lost the license, the title was changed to Outlander for the game's release in 1992. So if you play the game Outlander, it's Mad Max. It's Mad Max 2 under another name. There have also been Mad Max comics, as we said, and there were even plans for a Mad Max TV series, but that also never materialized. So we put out the call, as we often do, for your thoughts and memories related to Mad Max, and got quite a response. So Philip on X said, I would have been interested in seeing something set back in the city as things continue to devolve, maybe contrasted with settlements in the outback. The first film had some interesting Clockwork Orange, Full Metal Jacket, urban collapse vibes that weren't revisited later on. So as we said, the first film was more or less like our society now, and then society got like more devolved as they went on, and he would have liked to have Mad Max 1.5, I guess that kind of vibe. Howard on Instagram said, the first Mad Max is the film I've watched more times than any other. I watched the dubbed version so often that when the non-dubbed came out here, I actually didn't like it as much. So there you go.
Wow.
It's for Howard.
Howard liked it.
Howard liked that version.
Yeah.
I get that though. You're used to a certain version.
Yeah, exactly.
You're like, Howard also says, I don't think Thunderdome gets enough praise. It may have had a greater cultural impact than any of the films. Certainly the song. Sam Thomas on Facebook said, Mad Max 2 is easily in my top 5 all-time list. It has everything. Great soundtrack, fantastic finale, Bennett from Commando, and it even inspired Fist of the North Star, which is an anime series, which again, they said it was inspired by Mad Max. Jamie Roberts on Instagram said, love them, meaning the films. Weirdly, the original was one of the first films I remember watching when I was 5 or 6.
5 or 6.
Jamie, that is far too young.
Very irresponsible parenting.
That is, I was quite traumatized watching it in my 30s. He said, the best thing about the series is that none of the films are alike. I would agree. Even Mad Max 2 and Fury Road are very different despite being feature-length car chases.
Yeah.
And Pete B on Facebook finally said, as a kid, the post-apocalyptic setting kind of disturbed me. All I remember is Tina Turner showing up in one of them and a boomerang that could decapitate marauders. So there you go.
Wow.
Thoughts?
Yeah.
Now I've given you a sort of potted history.
Well, you know, like we normally say, if one of us hasn't seen things, they go, oh yeah, I'll go and watch it. And
Yeah.
deep down, you go,
No, I'm busy. I'm like Eminem, I'm busy.
Like Rocky,
Yeah.
I genuinely am looking forward to eventually watching these.
Okay.
Again, I really loved Fury Road.
Yeah.
And that's just reminded me just how good it was.
Well, and I think it's worth watching them all.
Oh, yeah.
But you could definitely watch, say, Mad Max 2, which kind of vies with, they're very different, kind of vies with Fury Road for being the best one. You could watch that in isolation and just go, oh, that's a great film. You don't necessarily need to have seen Mad Max to get like Mad Max 2.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I think it's a great franchise. I love the whole vibe.
Yeah.
Look forward to watching them.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, you can find more retrospectives on action classics like Commando, Die Hard, and even Demolition Man at 2geeks2beers.com. Plus more outings covering off classic TV shows and video games.
You can also follow us on all the socials at 2geekscast on Facebook, Instagram, and X. We're also on YouTube and TikTok, where you'll find clips from episodes old and new, as well as full-length episodes. Maybe you're watching this right now on YouTube.
Oh,
the full-length version.
Meta.
Yeah.
Please also rate and review the podcast via your podcast outlet of choice, where you can also subscribe. And you can also, of course, become a 2Geek supporter on Patreon at patreon.com/2geekscast. You can sponsor the podcast, and in return, you can get exclusive Patreon-only minisodes, outtakes, personalized thank you videos, merch, and much more.
You can also email us podcast@2geeks2beers.com with any thoughts, feedback, and suggestions for future episodes. And as ever, we've put the call out for a few questions on socials, just random stuff. So we thought we'd do one now, including the one you just mentioned earlier in the episode.
Yeah, so I asked, which franchise has the best third film? Say it's hard to get the third film right. Mark Langshaw came back with a few. Jason Bourne, Friday the 13th, Spider-Man's MCU trilogy, Guardians of the Galaxy, the Dollars trilogy, Wolverine, Evil Dead, more than you might think. Philip said Goldfinger has a lot of fans. I like it, but I do feel like it's where some of the blockbuster bloat of the Bond franchise started to come in. I would agree. And Ranil Patel said Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, Lord of the Rings, Return of the King, Army of Darkness again, and not the best films of the franchise, but still great, Return of the Jedi and Prisoner of Azkaban. So
there you go. And if you go on our Patreon, we are now debating ourselves some of these questions.
Yes.
So we've recently done, which one was it? The underrated superhero movies.
Yes. Which was the most underrated superhero movie, and what book would we like to see adapted into a TV show or film? So if you want to hear us chat a little bit more about that, it's all on Patreon, patreon.com/2geekscast. That's it for now. Thanks for joining us, Road Warriors. This is 2 Geeks, 2 Beers, rolling out. Catch you in the wasteland.
I was going to say bye in an Australian accent, but it's not going to work, is it? You do it.
Bye.
Did they have what's the equivalent of good day?
Goodbye?
Bye.
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 Just sounds like Cockney. Bye.
Bye.
Anyway.
So you mentioned Bennett from Commando having his arse out.
Chaps, whatever they're called.
Assless. Vernon Wells had assless chaps in Mad Max 2. Apparently, when shooting Mad Max 2, the film's location was bitterly cold. Mel Gibson called Vernon Wells barometer bum because of the outfit he was wearing, which revealed his bare buttocks.
Yeah.
When Wells' butt cheeks went purple, they knew it was too cold, and they sent everyone, the cast and crew, into the bus to warm up.
Purple.
Yeah, when they went like pink, it was fine, but when they went purple, it's like, it's too cold. So, a few people have said that this podcast is a load of old arse, but that's literally where we've ended up here today. So.
See you later.
Ass smash.